Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your girl, Chidi LPC, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Self-Aware and Effed podcast. I know that you guys have been giving a lot of comments this season, and I'm really, really great. I want you guys to keep the energy coming, keep pouring in your love, because it is absolutely amazing to see how much you guys are enjoying this season. This week's episode will also be amazing. I know you probably are always saying, you always say that, Tree, but I do really, truly mean it, because I have an amazing guest with me. His name is Nick Klingensmith, and he is going to tell you a lot about his journey. He is an author. He's the owner of Stride Motivation. He's a motivational speaker, a mental endurance coach, and he's also an endurance athlete. If you guys, when you come on screen, when he comes on screen, you guys will be able to see all of his medals and the things that he's done. So I am really excited to learn more about his journey towards purpose and really helping people move through life in a meaningful and authentic way. So without further ado, please welcome to the Self-Aware and Effed podcast, Nick Klingensmith. Hey, Nick, what's going on?
Tree, what's happening?
Not much, man. I'm really excited to talk to you. When you first came on screen and I started seeing all these medals, I was like, oh, wow. I'm really intrigued by this guy. So I got to know more, got to know him a little bit more about who you are. So please, let's just go ahead and dive in and have you tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
All right. I want to start with a story, and I want to tell you about a time that my boss walked into my office about 7 years ago. And he looks at me and he says, Nick, I want to do a Spartan race, and I want you to do it with me. And I looked at him and I said, no, fuck no. That an 8 to 10 mile trail run, that seemed horrible. Add in obstacles, no way. I never wanted to feel that uncomfortable. And I went home that night. And that's when I discovered the problem, because I was lying on my couch and I was thinking about it. And I was at a place in my life where I was on top of the world. I was a VP at the company I was working for. I had just been promoted. I had about 100 people working for me. We were crushing goals. I was 2 years sober. Okay. I was dating a new girl that's my now wife. And I had just decisively beaten cancer for the 4th time.
Wow.
But something was missing, and I realized I was stuck. I already was uncomfortable. And so as I reflected back to everything I had gone through up until that point, I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover fatality car accidents. I have I almost died from meningitis. I had the long COVID. I have sleep apnea, nerve damage. Terrorists put a nerve gas bomb threat on my airplane. It had nothing to do with any of the story, but I just like to drop it in from time to time to keep it interesting. And I had created this bubble around myself where I had convinced myself that, number one, I was a victim of all this bullshit. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't run. I couldn't go adventure. I couldn't. And I realized that despite everything I had been through, I hadn't overcome my adversity at all. I had only survived it. And that's why I was uncomfortable, is because I was like, what am I doing with my life? And so I said yes to the challenge. And I had no idea that 7 years later, I just completed my 104th Spartan race this weekend.
Wow.
I've run the Boston, Chicago, New York, and Berlin marathons. And I've completed 60 or 70 other obstacle course, endurance events, and sufferfests. And when I published my book, Through the Fire, in 2021, writing it was transformative. Writing was, the first year was like the ego version. Okay. It was like 125,000 word, mindless manifesto. It might as well have had Jake Gyllenhaal on the cover. Like, it was a cool look into the world of endurance sports and obstacle course racing, but it really wasn't an honest story about me. And that's where the second year cutting out 37,000 words and revising and revising and revising. And you begin to strip away the bullshit that you've been telling yourself all this time. And you start to see your life in a different perspective. And all of a sudden you start to see the pattern to it. And you realize that this victim mindset that you had cultivated your entire life was a decision that you can make to no longer be the victim. And that I found a purpose to my life, which is to inspire other people to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. And so the last couple of years, that's exactly what I have been doing, from conversations with people, transitioning my career into that of a motivational speaker and coaching people on achieving their goals and overcoming their obstacles.
Wow. That was a lot. Let me just say that was absolutely a lot. You have such an amazing story, because first of all, if someone were to ask me to do any type of running, racing, anything, the answer is going to be hell no. I would have the same response that you did. But to see you go from like, no, I don't want to do this, to like all that you've achieved over the last 7 years, that's absolutely crazy. And I love that it also, you mentioned it kind of led you also towards like purpose. Can you speak a little bit more about what that finding the purpose piece looked like for you?
I mean, it literally, so I coach people now, and I coach other achievement-driven professionals, people who are probably in the greater 30 to 55-year-old bracket. And I know that's broad, but there are people who have typically achieved something and now find themselves a little stuck, lost, or unmotivated. And what I found is that, it's funny. I spoke to a group of middle schoolers a couple weeks ago in New Jersey, and I asked them all who they wanted to be when they grew up. And they started out answering with an engineer. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be this. I want to be that. And I'm like, okay, those are great jobs, but that wasn't what I asked you. I asked you who you wanted to be when you grew up. And because a lot of us, we find that we have these seasons and phases of our lives where we think we have to be somebody, and we might achieve it. We might get that job we wanted. We might get the house, the spouse, the whatever. And that's when all of a sudden we realize that whatever we thought was our purpose wasn't a purpose, and we don't have one. And so what I'm working with people on is to actually help them identify their purpose for this phase of their lives. Now, the reason I point that out is because I am very fortunate, because I found my life's purpose.
Yeah.
And it literally hit me. Now, people talk about your why and your purpose all the time. And a lot of the people that I'm talking to, but potential coaching clients, when I start asking them about their why and their purpose, right? And they're telling me, well, support my family and my kids and this and that. And I'm like, dude, shut up. That's not true. It's bullshit. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, if that were true, you wouldn't be on the phone with me right now. That's what got you here. It wasn't enough to keep you going. And so I found the high level purpose. It literally was looking at the pattern of my life. And because as I'm writing the book and I'm thinking about when I got cancer the second time, when I got diabetes, when I got it the third time, and this happened, my sister died, my mom died. And I'm just thinking, well, haven't I had enough? But when I'm writing the book and I realize, I'm like, bro, it's never going to stop. Yeah. It's never going to stop. Bad things will always happen. Life doesn't discriminate. Life continues to just hammer and hammer and hammer. The problem is my mentality right here is I'm hidden in the corner in the fetal position saying, please leave me alone. And I'm making a decision not to live my life. And I'm like, you know what? I have been through some shit, and I have come through the fire, and I have come on the other side of it. And now that I talk about it and I help people, I become stronger. And the more self-aware that I become and the more vulnerable that I become stronger. And as I tell other people and I help them through the things that I've gone through, I realize that, like, yes, I actually have this thing pulling me now. Yeah. And that's what my purpose was. And it said, you know why I had all that stuff happen to me? Because I can. Because I can take it. Because I can take the beating. And so because I can, maybe that is my purpose, is simply to take the beating and then use it to help others. It might be self-serving. It might be bullshit, but who cares? It gives me a better perspective on my life. Like, I actually look at bad things happening like a game now. Wow. When something bad happens, I look at it like, great. Now I get to learn how to overcome a hamstring injury. Now I get to overcome a job loss. Now I get to overcome this. I've literally turned life and its negative consequences that, do, by the way, not for nothing, I don't think there's anything unique about me. Nothing. And I mean that, because life doesn't discriminate. Everything that I've talked about, you know, at least one person who has at least one of those things, and so does everybody else. And I bet if you really started talking to everybody in your circle, you're going to find 1 out of 5 people is diabetic or cancer. More people, just go to the airport and you can see how many people are carrying their sleep machines with them when they board the plane.
Yeah.
I am not unique. And so I think that's what makes it a relatable thing for a lot of people. The only thing that's unique about me is the totality of all that
together
happened.
Yes. That makes you very damn unique, because I'm sitting here like, I don't think I would have survived all of that. It is a lot. And I'm really inspired by what you do, even though the singular of it all may not be like unique, but to do that and then to take that and find your purpose through that and being able to help other people like that, that's fucking amazing. And I mean, I know that when you're coaching people, and it was something you said earlier that I wanted to kind of go back to, because when we talk about purpose, so many of us, we look at purpose as what we do in our career. We allow what we do as a job, our vocation, to define us.
Purpose is not your profession. Now, if you ask me now that we just said this, I'm not going to get a natural answer, but I'll ask you anyway. What do you do?
I'm a therapist.
Huh. Interesting. Like, what's my LinkedIn headline? My LinkedIn headline doesn't say motivational speaker.
No.
It says the 4-time cancer survivor, type 1 diabetic, and recovering alcoholic who became an obstacle course racer and defied it all. Now, that's the subtitle of my book, and it's LinkedIn. So, of course, it's designed to say, you know, the business part of me, but that is who I am. I'm the guy who goes through shit and overcomes. That's who I am.
Yeah.
I make money as a motivational speaker. Now, let me ask you a different question. What if you had infinite amount of money? Would you still do the work that you do as a therapist?
I would still do therapy work. I would do very little therapy work.
Now, let me re-ask you the question, all right? Change your mindset for a second. You have infinite amount of money. You have no financial worries at all, okay? What do you do?
I'd probably be like out rapping somewhere.
I mean, like, re-answer the question about therapy, since you said you're still going to do it.
I'm still going to do therapy. Like, I think I will always do that.
Would you respond, though, that you're a therapist, or would you respond that you help people?
I help people. Sure. Yeah.
And that's who you are.
Gotcha.
So, because if you would do it for free, right, your job does not define you. And so if you would do it with infinite amounts of money, if I would ask you, like, hey, what do? You'd be like, yeah, I'm rapping out west. I chill. I do this. And I picked up this crazy new hobby and I help people.
Yeah.
Right. So if I had infinite amounts of money, the only difference of how I spend my time right now is I would pay other people to get me gigs. And I would not do sales, but I would do what I do for no money whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, because I help people. That's who I am. That's what I do.
No. Yeah, I get what you're saying, for sure. Like, helping people is definitely at the core of who I am. It's always been there. So, you know, but we define ourselves by our vocation. So, you know. It was
a hard part for me because I was at a place for 14 years and I was a 7th employee. We had over 500 by the time I left. I was a VP. I had equity. I was making ducats and I hated it. I loved it for a long time. But my last year there was torturous. And part of the reason was because the company was changing a lot. And as it changed for years, I was fine with that. I even told others, I'm like, listen, you got to change with the company or be okay with the fact that our paths may not all go the same place.
Yeah.
You know? So as I kind of realized when I got to that last year, I'm like, wow, I never realized I was talking about myself. I thought I was going to die there. You know, like I thought I would be there for another 30 years or 10 now, but I thought I would have been there forever. And it was hard for me to leave because I identified myself with that company. People knew me as part of that company. The company hasn't missed a beat since I've been gone. And my life has continued to flourish, but it's hard when who am I? I'm the guy from that place. Yeah. And it is. And then so now, you know, on the topic of self-awareness, I have to ask myself a lot of times, like, why am I threatened by this? Or why am I anxious about this? Even when, you know, looking as a new business person, right? Because I've been speaking for 25 years. I've been coaching for 25 years, but I've only been doing it on my own as a business for like 6 months. And I know very little about the business.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to take risks, But sometimes I have to ask myself when I'm looking at like, financial things, or what if this happens, or what if that happens? And when I start to ask myself, like, what am I afraid of? What's the worst that can happen? Every once in a while, you got to check your motives. Am I concerned about failing, or am I just concerned about what other people will think of me for failing? Because shouldn't those, unless those are the same ones who are paying my bills these days, their opinions do not matter. But that's part of that self-awareness that comes in, is you have to ask yourself these questions, like, where is these feelings coming from? And because at the end of the day, it's those outside influences that are not outside influences that influence our decisions. It's not my friends who are influencing my decision. It's my vision of my friends that are influencing my decision.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of us think about what other people will think of us. I've gotten to the place in my life where I really don't care what other people think, but I think I'm really hard on myself in terms of like how I see what I do, not as a therapist, because that part of my life is very much, like it is what it is. I do it. It is a core. Helping people it is a part of the core of who I am. And so I don't have any, negative feelings around that. But like, even through this podcast, this is something that I do, literally because it's something that I want to be able to educate people. I want to be able to help people. And, it takes a lot to get a podcast to a certain level where you're reaching the type of people and the amount of people that you want to reach. And so I want to quit all the time, not because of other people, but because of my own like limitations and things that I think. And so it's a struggle.
And imposter syndrome is a real thing. And you'll get this because as a speaker, right? Or even as a coach, I look on any social media platform and I see the content they're putting out, the work they're doing. And all of a sudden I'm like, why aren't I doing that?
Right.
Oh my God, I need to be there today. And I'm like, no, you don't. We're right here. We're right here. But it's also so refreshing that I'll talk to them because we'll network with each other, and it will meet each other. And then I'm finding out that these guys are right where I'm at, or at least that they were too. And, it's just that imposter syndrome of like, there's nothing wrong with seeing what other people are doing and wanting to be there.
Yeah.
But I have to imagine it's probably in the podcast community's got to be the same, because you've got to be constantly looking at and talking to other podcasters. And there's that one person who's doing that one thing and you're like, I need to be doing that.
Yes.
But I'll have to stop what I'm doing in order to do that. And I'm not done here yet. Damn it.
Yeah.
On my desk is a book over here called The One Thing. And I don't know if you've ever read it, but I highly recommend to a lot of people. Part of it's a little outdated, but it's really about time management focus. And the main theme here is that when you need to prioritize your activity, you have to ask yourself, and the book says, what is the one thing that I can be doing right now that will make all other things easier or unnecessary? But I've tweaked the question to simply ask myself, what is the one thing I can do right now that will get me closest to my goals? And I'll ask myself that a lot throughout the course of the day, because when you're diving into the unknown and the uncertain, and you're a process-driven person like I am, and yet there is no official process, I need a process to be efficient. The way that we keep imposter syndrome out and fear out and doubt out is not give it the time. So the worst 15 minutes of my day are when I finish my workout and I'm starting my business day and I'm putting my planner together for the day. When that 15 minutes is done, everything else is just going through it. But we have to be able to be adaptable throughout the course of the day too, because things happen, right?
Right. For sure. I mean, it's hard to kind of escape that imposter syndrome in the age of social media for a lot of people. But I do think that a lot of what you said around networking and taking the things that you can learn. But the one thing, that's something that's going to stick with me, because I know that I will see 20 different things on social media that I feel like I should be doing. And then I have to look at the fact that you work a full-time job for the government. You work 20 hours a week for your business. You consult with other corporations. You host a podcast. And then you also, I think about all the other shit that I have going on. And it's like, I don't have the damn time to do what they're doing. Maybe one day, and I'm going to work towards that. So I really like the idea of the one thing, because not everybody, is able to do full-time content creation or things of that nature. And so we have to, I really have to take that to heart, the one thing. So I'm gonna have to get that book information, the author and all of that from you, so that I can start doing better with my life.
I read this years ago, and somebody brought this up. I'm on a virtual, so it's not gonna be able to see it, but somebody brought this up. Okay, I give up. Somebody brought it up on a call yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I need a refresher, because as I've learned, every one of these medals behind me is about mindset. Nothing says first place on there. Okay. I'm a highly competitive person against me. What this lifestyle does for me, and it's about intention. Because if you really want to get physically active, to your point, right? The same thing with entrepreneurship or a project like a podcast, you have to be very intentional with your time. We have the time. It's how we use it, or more like how we misuse it, that really screws us up.
Yeah.
And so this forces me to be very intentional with my time. I used to set a lot of goals. Now I set 5 priorities, and I call them priorities. Because again, to what you're talking about, right? Like, now for me, this is my full-time job, but my full-time job involves being on podcasts, reaching out to podcast hosts. So right. And then of course, scheduling, doing the podcast, sharing the content, like when it's all out. So, I mean, that's 3 parts of a job right there. Right.
Yeah.
Looking for speaking opportunities is just sales and networking. And then when I actually get the speaking opportunity, I block out like 2 days before, because I'm practicing and rehearsing and making the thing right. Yeah. And then I'm going to take a week to edit the video, because I'm my own video content creator too. I do daily shorts. I actually have a backlog of content. So I'm in a very lucky position to be that. Plus, writing is what I want to do. I'm trying to finish this other book for 6 damn months. I need money today, which means my coaching clients are going to be the things I need to focus on the most.
Right.
And so at the end of it, it boils down to that priority of like, what is the one thing I can do right now? Because if I went by feel, I'm going to go write my book. And, because this is my full-time thing, the things like, it feels like I need to be putting that video content out there. But to be honest, the reason I post so much is because I wasn't planning on doing this business for another year. I had a full-time job. And then they were like, last October, they're like, we're making cuts. You're one of them. And I was like, well, it's go time now. Yeah. So therefore, I don't have the brand awareness that I wanted to have. So part of the reason that I have to put that content out there like I do is just to continue to build that up, almost like as an aside of what I'm doing. But I have to remember, those are feel-good things.
Yeah.
Followers and likes don't put money in my pocket.
Right.
They're feel good. They're building that up. One of the people might lead to something that's going to lead to something that's going to lead to something. Sure. But so as much as sometimes I really want to edit this video, I also have to look back, and I look on my YouTube channel sometimes to see that the favorite video I've ever made has 61 views. So it's not a big priority as it is for simply being on the phone, trying to introduce myself to potential prospects. So it is about making uncomfortable decisions sometimes. But the other thing that I found too is that person who's putting out that amazing content, right? Remember, we saw something in our feed that they put out.
Right.
They might be doing one little thing a week that's like awesome. And maybe I'm doing 5 okay things a week instead of one awesome thing. It's just about different approach. And it's not something that should make me feel bad about myself. And it is a slippery slope too, because I've never, ever been the guy who's threatened or put off by somebody else's success on social media. I remember in 2020 seeing somebody bitch about somebody else posting about their vacation pics.
Yeah.
And they're like, how dare they do that in these times? And I went off. I just was like, decided to be an asshole. And I was like, who the fuck are you? I'm like, why do you have a problem with somebody else having like happiness? What does that have to do with you? I'm like, when I see that, I'm like, oh my God, thank God people are still buying new cars.
Yeah.
Thank God people are still taking vacations, because the other 80% of the people I know said life sucks. So thank God people are still making money. There's these things. And by the way, if they can, I can too.
Right.
Rather than, they're doing that. Well, that's part of that victim mindset. We create excuses and blame for ourselves for actions that we don't want to take.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure like a lot of what you do probably is having to, because you said you're a mental endurance coach. So I'm sure a lot of your coaching involves helping people kind of reframe and prepare for for whatever's next for them when it comes to like their purpose and living an inspired life. What does that coaching part look like for you when you're working with someone that's coming to you and maybe they are falling apart and they need your guidance?
Well, the couple of people that I'm working with, right? Like, these usually they're not falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
They just aren't sure where to go. And that might feel falling apart. But the first thing that we do is, I call it a vision statement. And I'm going to come up with a cooler word for it at another point. But literally, Tree, I get them to dream. That's the first part, is we simply have to dream again. One of the guys that I'm working with, I asked him to do this exercise. And the idea is to start dreaming. And it's a journaling. There's a lot of journaling involved. And we write down the things that we want to do, the places we want to see, the place we want to go, the activities we want to do. Just get it all down there, right? And I mean, I want to drive the first car that flies and travels in time. Like, write down stupid shit, all right? Instead, he returns this manifesto about, I need to start doing this and think better about myself. Oh, I need to let go of my bad behavior. I'm like, dude, you can't even dream without kicking yourself while you're down. You got to leave that guy behind. And so that's a part of it. Is the first thing is just to get them dreaming again, to think big, to think like when we were little kids before we started getting told no. And before we started seeing how hard life can be. Because here's part of the problem, is that then we start telling ourselves not to go after things because it's going to be hard, because we're going to fail, because the percentage is so low. But when you limit your beliefs, you limit your actions. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I don't think I can accomplish it, I'm not going to do it. I force myself into mediocrity. So first, open up that mind. You don't know what you don't know. And I get to talk, and I share these through my own experiences. And again, I talk about my first race. I was on the couch, literally on the couch. Can't run because of my knees. My diabetes doesn't do this. I'm too fat for this. Oh, I'll never be able to breathe again because I never really worked that hard. It's too hard for me because I have diabetes and I can't be out in the woods. Oh, I have to regulate my metabolism through pills, so I'm never going to have the right energy. Who knows? I sleep with a stupid mask and I might not get the right breath. I have nerve damage. My body's not going to work right. Blah, blah, blah. My first race, I'm out in the woods, running, muddy, dirty, gritty, just covered in badass from head to toe. All right. And I was just out there without, like a little kid again. No fear, no doubt. It wasn't me against the world. It was just me in the world experiencing it. And I'm like, when I jumped through the fire that day, and I'm like, holy shit, what else have I been wrong about?
Yeah.
What else can I do? So the very first thing is we have to get the vision. And then when I'm working with them, it is about reflecting back, because you might tell me, and by the way, what I do is I say, all right, at 85 years old, I want you to describe your life. And then we do it at 65 years old, and then 55, and we're going to reverse engineer down to like the day. Okay. It gets more and more tangible and more specific. And then the next thing I do is I kind of reflect back to them and I point out the conflicts that they have. So you might say, hey, I'm going to be like 10 years from now, I'm going to be like the well-known, super respected therapist across the globe at the top of my game, like writing books, doing this. And then you're going to be like, I'm adventuring and I'm traveling and I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be like, well, Tree, those are two very different things. Who do you want to be? Because sometimes, again, we think, like one of the younger guys I'm coaching, he's saying he's looking about 10, 15 years in the future, describing how he wants to be like super stud executive person in the industry that he's in. And I'm like, cool. Is that what you want to do, or just what you think you're supposed to do? So I ask a lot of challenging questions, because the idea isn't about planning out the rest of our life. It's about figuring out who do we want to be. So then we can start making decisions that are in line with your purpose of who we want to be. Part of the reasons that people get burned out and jammed up in their jobs is a couple things. We put the responsibility of being happy on our employer.
That's
I've written and read thousands of job descriptions in my life, and your happiness at work is not a prerequisite for being there. So I don't know why people get confused about that. Number two, it's our responsibility to be happy. So when we give that away to somebody else, No wonder we're not happy. So then we start getting resentful, and resentment is not resilience. So the thing that I ultimately work with people when it gets down to the tangible, right? Because most people, I've loved my job and I've sucked at it and I've been happy at it and I've been stuck in it. We all get there, right? And so we want to be able to feel good. So I don't help them become better salespeople. I help them become more comfortable in their own skin and to pursue goals that are beyond their work, that their work will support.
Mm.
So in other words, when I was in logistics the last 2 years languishing because I knew I wanted to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Well, there was 100 opportunities I had a day to speak and help to another person. There's 100 opportunities I had a day to learn from somebody, to network from somebody, to put money in the bank to support what I want to do now, to build another networking connection, to learn something new, or find a new platform that would be an avenue to where I want to go now. Our professions are not our purpose, but they should support our purpose. And so if you feel a calling and a drive to help people, that's why you're a therapist.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a speaker, because my profession can support my purpose. And it's that level of alignment that will get us through the day. And that's ultimately what I'm working with people is when we set that big direction, that we reverse engineer, we goal set to the now, we set those big goals, and then we identify what is the one thing that we can do right now that will get us closer to our goals. And then we get into that action step. And more often than not, the things we want to do in our life, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, are going to have dollar signs next to them.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like with the younger guy that I'm working with, a couple things that are on his list is important things to him have to do with the relationship with his dad. So he's planning a golf trip next year. That's probably a $10,000 trip. I'm assuming more. Well, that's going to motivate him to work.
Yeah.
He wants to take his mom on a trip out of the country where she's never been. Like those are things that are going to cost money. These are things that he looked forward to. So even though he was doing well financially, he realized that he was losing that steam. And now he's working for a higher purpose. He's not punching the clock to do this. He's punching the clock to take his dad to Pebble Beach, to take his mom to Italy.
Yeah.
Right. And these aren't like these longer term things. So like it's long enough to keep them focused, but not so long that they become vague and abstract. And we have the vague and abstract ones. And that's why we continue to work together on developing his career, the 10-year plan as we figure out who he wants to be.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, as you were talking, I'm thinking like, yeah, I really do work to travel. That is my motivation for logging in each day. It's like I got this trip planned for next month and the next month, because I travel once a month regardless. I don't care what's going on in life. So it's kind of like, I love the idea of if you can do for a profession what your actual purpose is. Like if you can do your purpose while working, that's great. But for a lot of people, they get stuck in mundane jobs and they don't really get to do or live their purpose. And that's unfortunate, but it sounds like a lot of what you're getting to do now is truly living in your purpose. So I love that.
And that's where I get to try to help people in the mundane jobs, because again, I can stand on my head. All right. I used to clean one of my favorite, most miserable jobs was when I was a broil cook at Applebee's. All right.
Okay.
And I liked it because I liked the people. I was younger. All right. I like fast-paced work. But as a college kid, working 40, 50 hours a week in a restaurant while taking full-time course load, scrubbing the back wall on a Saturday night was not the way you wanted to spend it.
Right.
And it was real easy to get some, why do I have to do this? My friends are out partying, blah, blah, blah. When people would ask me because then I'd get home at 1:00 in the morning on a Tuesday sometimes, and I would start my homework and I would work till 7 a.m, sleep for 45 minutes, get up and start it all over again. It's because there was no point in me working so hard if I wasn't going to do well.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do well in school. I was very ambitious. There's things I wanted to do. So I wasn't working for, like $8 an hour or whatever nonsense it was, scrubbing the back wall. I was literally pursuing my dreams at that point, because the dream at that point, the purpose at that point was I saw myself becoming a lawyer and eventually an FBI agent. So it's like, these are the steps I want to go to. And it wasn't that it was being a broil cook is an extraordinarily mundane job. Nothing's going to change from one day to the next. And that was a college job for me. But for some people, that's like their everyday job. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
What does this job do? And that's where the mental connection is, when we feel like we just have to be there. If you're not using it for yourself, even if it doesn't change the outcome, if it changes the perspective, you're the one who's going to benefit. And the thing is, it will change the outcome. That person we're jealous of, be that person. Mm-hmm. Always prepare. I always like to say this too, like, you never know when your moment is going to come. So I don't care if you're like the ditch digger, if you're the guy who has to walk around and pick up the dog poop, be the best dog poop picker upper there ever was. Because otherwise you're not going to get that next job or that next opportunity when it's there. We have a responsibility for ourselves to present our best selves. And that's where it's not our employer's fault that we're not stimulated at work. Now, could employers have better employees if they took more time and effort to help us be more stimulated and happy? Yeah, but that's not their responsibility. That's just them being a better company.
There's so much we can dive into there, but I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and dive a little bit more into you. Because I'm curious. I mean, I know obviously you decided to come on the podcast, but I want to know, how do you personally connect with the idea of being self-aware and fucked up?
The self-awareness thing has been, it's almost like a drug, and one I wish I wasn't taking. And honestly, what I mean by that is, again, when I started I've had a couple things that have helped me get to where I'm at right now. And one has been, I've been sober for almost 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm in a program of sobriety that constantly focuses on meditation and self-reflection and taking a personal inventory and, really focusing on taking responsibility for my side of the street and things. And so I've really been able to develop this responsibility for my personal responsibility, which means I'm constantly looking at my motives and I'm constantly reviewing, why am I doing certain things? But since I started talking about it, and since I started sharing vulnerability and sharing about fears, that's when it's almost like I tapped this thing that I just simply can't plug. The gates have been open of this constant outpouring of self-awareness. And for a while, it was debilitating. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to see their weaker self. Nobody wants to admit when they were selfish. Nobody wants to admit when our motives were less than pure. But I'm so able to look back at those things now. And since I am able to talk about them, they begin to lose power over me. And that's so critical, is now that I see the power of going through it, and I just don't have to deny the things. I think a lot of people are more self-aware than we're willing to admit. We just don't like what we see, so we ignore it or we call it something else.
Yeah.
And we justify it. Well, I lived that way a long time. I don't want to have to justify my actions anymore. Mm. I'm less afraid of making mistakes because now I am more willing to rectify them. But to see them is just so powerful, and to use those for our advantage. But we have to be willing to be wrong. We simply have to be willing to make mistakes.
Well, I appreciate your openness and honesty kind of with that, because it is hard for us to sometimes like look in the mirror at ourselves and really, it's hard because a lot of us don't like what we see, but I appreciate you being vulnerable and opening up in that way. But Nick, I do want to say, I know you got a lot going on out there. Motivational speaker, author, you got a lot going on in terms of coaching and everything that you do. How can people connect with you if they want to use your services, purchase your book, or just connect with you and have you come speak at an event that they're doing?
Best way to contact me is on stridemotivation.com. And I'm going to just say, book a call, whether it be interesting in a speaking opportunity. If you just want to talk about some goals, those are conversations I'm very excited to have. I post daily content everywhere on social media at Stride Motivation. And the book, Through the Fire, is on Amazon and Kindle.
Awesome. So I can't wait to look at your stuff, and I really, really appreciate your time. This has been very helpful for me. So I know it's going to be very helpful for the audience. Guys, please make sure that you connect with Nick. All of the information of how you can connect with him will be in the description of this episode. Also, make sure that you guys follow me, Tree the LPC, on all social media platforms under the handle Tree the LPC. Until next time, be safe, be well, and make sure that you take care of your mental health.